Aleppo. We didn't attack Aleppo. We tried to get rid of the terrorists everywhere. But
were they terrorists in Aleppo or were they moderates?
In Aleppo?
Yes.
No, you don't have any moderate militants in Syria.
No moderate militants in Syria?
No moderate. Again, go back
Everybody, so the definition of a terrorist is what?
Of terrorism? Whenever you hold a gun and kill people and destroy public buildings, destroy private properties, that's terrorism.
So anyone who opposed your government in Syria and used military tactics was a terrorist?
With the military tactics?
Using
or without?
Using weapons to...
The word opposition everywhere in the world, including your country, is a political opposition. Do you have military opposition in the United States? Would you accept it? You wouldn't. And we wouldn't. No one accepts military opposition. Military means...
It's one thing to say there is military opposition. It's another thing to call them terrorists.
Military opposition is terrorism. Whenever you hold a gun and machine gun and try to destroy and kill and threat, this is terrorism by every definition in the world. It's not my definition. Whenever you want to make opposition, it's going to be political opposition, like your country. Use the same criteria. We don't have different criteria than the one that you have in the United States or in Europe or anywhere else.
If there's a negotiation, would you accept as part of the negotiation and share power in Syria with anyone who is in opposition to you now, whether they are moderates, whether they are terrorists? But if in fact they lay down their arms and say, we want to be part of a future government, you and your father have held power in Syria for how many years? The combination of you and your father. How many years?
Is it a calculation of years?
Yes.
Or public support?
No, years.
There's a big difference.
How long have you had?
Years doesn't matter how many years. The question...
Well, it does matter.
No, what's matter for us, do the Syrians support these two presidents? Doesn't matter if they are father and son. We don't say George W. Bush is the son of George Bush. It's different. He's president, I'm president. He has support from that generation. I have support from these generations now. That's the question.
How do you know
Doesn't matter how many. It's not the family rule, as you want to imply.
It's not?
No, it's not. No, it's not family rule. It has nothing to do with me being president. When he died, I was nothing. I was just in the army. I wasn't official. I wasn't, let's say, a high-ranking official.
You know, you know your family much better than I do. But the conventional wisdom is that after your older brother died, your father wanted you to come back because he wanted you to be able to assume power when he left.
Actually, the reality is the opposite. He wanted me to stay as a doctor and to go back to London, and I refused. That's the reality.
He didn't want you to come back?
No, never. He didn't want me to be part of the politics.
Then why did you become part of the political process when you were a doctor?
We live in a political family, we live in a political environment, and I'm in the army anyway. I'm a doctor in the army, and the army during the history in Syria has made the history and the reality in this country.
Because he was such a significant political figure in the Middle East, would he have done things differently if he was
That's a virtual question.
Today?
I cannot answer on his behalf. That's a virtual question. Nobody knows.
Do you think he would agree with what you've done?
Definitely, he wouldn't allow the terrorists to take over. He wouldn't submit to external intervention.
And ISIS is external.
And he would have defended his country like he did during the Muslim Brotherhood. The same happened on a smaller scale in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s, when the Muslim Brotherhood started assassinating and killing and destroying and burning. And he fought them. That's his mission as a president. That's what you have to do. To leave terrorist killing of people, that's your mission.
Is it a fair appraisal of what you believe? That everything must be done, and the end justifies the means to stop terrorism in Syria as you define it?
No, it's not ends justify the means. This is Machiavellian principle. You should have values and principles. You have constitutions and you have interests. So according to your values, you have to defend your people, the population, the Syrian citizen. You have to defend your country. For your interests, you have to get rid of terrorists. So that's how we think, not only Machiavellian in that regard. Anyway, we don't have any other option. What option do we have? Whether we suffer, whether we pay high price or less price. Well, what options do we have but to defend our country, but to fight terrorism? We don't have any other option.
I asked the question because many asked, what's the cost to Syria of what it's going through? And how will you put the pieces back together? Whenever there is finally an end to this, how will you put the pieces back together, and who will put the pieces back together?
There's misconception in the West that what's happening in Syria is a civil war. This is where you can ask that question. What's happening in Syria is not civil war. When you have civil war, you should have how to say, clear lines separated between different sects or ethnicities or different components. That's not what we have. What we have are terrorist infiltrated areas, and people are suffering from the fight with those terrorists and from the terrorism of those terrorists. So you don't have division in the society now. You don't have the sectarian issue now. Actually, you'll be surprised if I tell you that the sectarian situation in Syria today is better than the sectarian situation, let's say, before the crisis. People are more unified now regarding the conflict, regarding the unity of the sect, the religions, and so on. So we cannot talk about how can you rebuild, let's say, the society. The society suffering from humanitarian aspect of the problem, but it's not divided anymore. That's very important. And that's why we are assured that, I mean, even this conflict, which is very bad conflict, as you say, every cloud must have silver lining, and this is the silver lining in this conflict, that the population are more unified now. So we don't have problem as long as the society is unified and homogeneous. Regardless of some dark part of this society, ideological corners in our society that support the Wahhabi, support ISIS, and support the extremists, but it's not the general situation in our society.